Hey, so for this homework problem, what we're trying to do is subtract two rational expressions. So what is a rational expression? A rational expression is a fraction. It has a variable in it. Usually the variable shows up in the denominator, if not the numerator as well, like in this case. And to add and subtract, you must have a common denominator. You do not need a common denominator to do anything else with rational expressions. So you don't need a common denominator to multiply or divide, but only when you add or subtract. And if you'll notice, look at our denominators. Z squared minus 1 versus negative z squared plus 1. They look very similar. One way to find a least common denominator or a common denominator is if you multiply these two denominators together. And that would work in this problem. But it's not necessary, and here's why. I can do something basic to the second denominator to make it match the first one. If you'll notice, the signs are completely opposite. So z squared minus 1 is the opposite of negative z squared plus 1. And if ever that is the case, you can easily turn this denominator into this denominator by factoring out a negative 1. So notice if I do that, negative 1 comes out. That's going to make this negative z squared a positive z squared. It's going to make this plus 1 a minus 1. And notice they match. Now what do I do with that negative? Well, you can move it in front, which is going to make this negative, which is a subtraction here, turn into a addition. So now I have now I have 7z plus 5 over the original denominator, z squared minus 1, plus, again, because this and this turn into plus. It's just multiplication. And then I have plus negative 2z squared plus 7, I cannot write a 7 and a z, plus 7z plus 7 divided by, now it is z squared minus 1. So this is great. I have a common denominator. Once you have a common denominator, you're allowed to add the numerators together. So that gives me 7z plus 5 plus negative 2z squared plus 7z plus 7 divided by my common denominator, z squared minus 1. Now I add like terms. Now when I scan the numerator up here, I see the highest exponent is that z squared. I'm going to put it in the front, so negative 2z squared. Now I have a 7z and another 7z, so plus 14z. And then I have a 5 plus 7, so plus 12 divided by z squared minus 1. Now my next problem is, that's an answer, but is it reduced? And so to reduce, I have to factor both the numerator and the denominator to see if they have any common factors I can cancel. And I'm noticing in the numerator there's a 2 in common to all of those coefficients. Because the leading coefficient is negative, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. So that's negative 2. That leaves me with z squared minus 7z minus 6. Notice how all the signs change because I pull out that negative. If I multiply the negative 2 back inside to check myself, that would give me negative 2z squared plus 14z plus 12. So I factored that correctly. In the denominator, that's a difference of squares, so I could factor into z minus 1 times z plus 1. The question is, will this factor further z squared minus 7z minus 6? If so, that means there are numbers that multiply to be negative 6 and add to be negative 7 that exist. And I don't see it. Multiplies to be negative 6 could be 6 and 1, but it'd have to be like a positive 6 and a negative 1 or a negative 6 and a positive 1, and they add to be 5 or negative 5. There's no way if this is negative and this is negative for that to factor. So you know what? We're actually finished. We could be finished here or we could be finished here because nothing canceled. So I'm checking just to make sure I didn't make any silly mistakes, but I do believe that's it. Got to be careful with sign errors and things like that. I really wanted this to cancel so I can cancel a z minus 1 or a z plus 1 down here, but I just don't see it. So I hope that helps. Hope you have a wonderful day.